and talk slow. We do have a sign language interpreter here in front. For those of you online, hopefully you can hear me. Can I get a yes or no? Can online? Great.
I can hear you online.
And then we do have Spanish translation in the back if anyone needs that, as well as online, I believe. Great. My name is Marcia Nelson. I'm the Chief Equity Officer for CDOT, and I oversee our Office of Environmental Justice and Equity. We are very excited to have you here with us today. So before I actually get into the presentation, I'm going to ask you all to raise a hand like this. Everybody, even you online, somebody monitor and check for me. Now everybody shake your hand. Awesome. I promised myself that I would shake hands with everyone who attended tonight. Those of you online, I apologize for not being able to shake it with you in person, but we did it online. That's the beauty of our world today. So I do want to take a moment to introduce my right hand in the Office of Environmental Justice and Equity. Some of you have met her, some of you have not. Selena Milner-Leon is our Equity Engagement Program Manager. She's going to come up and give us a land acknowledgement to begin.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone. As we gather, we want to be intentional about grounding our work in the practice of acknowledging and honoring the land on which we live, work, and play as the ancestral territory of the original stewards of the land currently known as the state of Colorado, the Apache, Arapaho, Cheyenne, Dene, Lakota, Puebloan, and Ute nations. We honor these communities and their lasting legacy, recognizing that the Ute, Mountain Ute, and Southern Ute Indian tribe maintain their vibrant presence in Colorado as sovereign nations. We pause to acknowledge the ongoing crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous relatives. That's why I'm wearing red today, to call attention to the movement. And it's also said that red is the color that transcends the physical world and calls the ancestors in the spirit world to help guide all home. We acknowledge that the foundational infrastructure of the state of Colorado and the United States and most of our established institutions were laid on the exploitation of enslaved individuals. These individuals were uprooted from their homelands, transported to the US to perform hard labor while being stripped of fundamental human rights. Furthermore, our nation has exploited the labor of immigrants, both voluntary and involuntary, by undervaluing their time, expertise, and effort, and perpetuating injustice. We express our profound gratitude to our forebears for their enduring impact on our lives today. The Environmental Justice Equity Office and CDOT commits to supporting our colleagues and the communities we serve through advocating for environmental justice, holistic equity, proactive compliance, meaningful community engagement, and workforce development. With a commitment to fairness and equity, we pledge to engage with and listen to the voices of traditionally, historically underserved communities to guide our efforts in building a more inclusive and equitable transportation system. Thank you.
Thank you, Selena, for that beautiful land acknowledgement. And now I'll take a moment to introduce a new friend of mine. Not new, we've known each other for a while, but Ian Tafoya. He's been a great partner of ours here at CDOT. He and I sat together on the Environmental Justice Action Task Force that came out of Senate Bill 1266, the Environmental Justice Act here in Colorado. What was that, in 2019, I think it was, 2019? It's been a few years. Don't age me like that, please. Okay, so anyway, Ian Tafoya of Green Latinos to give a few opening remarks for us.
All right. Well, can everyone hear me okay? Sounds like we can. Well, first of all, I want to start by saying hello. My name is Ian Thomas Tafoya. As you heard, I am the Director Estatal para Green Latinos, una organización para justicia ambiental, aire limpia, agua limpia y mucho. I'm Ian Tafoya, the State Director of Green Latinos. We're an environmental justice organization founded in Washington, D.C. 16 years ago. Originally the National Latino Coalition for Climate Change. Obviously, NLCCC is a long name. We changed our name to Green Latinos a few years ago. And I've been a member of Green Latinos nearly a decade and employed by Green Latinos for going on almost 6 years now. We've had a huge opportunity to make a difference in our communities by bringing people together for events just like this. I can tell you we've come a long way. There aren't many meetings that you get to go to in the environmental space or government space 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that even really thought about language justice. We've been fighting for this, especially Spanish, going all the way back to the beginning of the founding of Colorado, where we had legitimately elected representatives come to the state legislature in the 1860s and 70s and not even have a legitimate interpreter, not even having the rules translated. And we still aren't quite there. We're working right now on a subcommittee or interim committee at the legislature where these conversations about accessibility, language justice, and so much more are being discussed. And Zoom certainly wasn't a part of the conversation a long time ago. I mean, you used to have to drive to some place like a rec center in rural Colorado just to get in front of a computer like this, not even just before COVID, in order to have access. So the level of the playing field is happening. We certainly have more to do. Today we're here. Oops, it looks like I accidentally advanced these slides. Today, I don't want to steal your thunder, Director. Today really we're here out of a promise that was negotiated with the governor's administration and the legislature with the passage of SB 21-260, which fundamentally transformed some of the ways in which we've done work in combination with the Environmental Justice Task Force. It created this Environmental Justice Office, really trying to embed environmental justice into every single agency takes time. It takes different pieces of legislation. It takes longevity of coalitions. It takes cooperation and consternation and so much more. I'm happy that you're here today now, Marcia. I'm grateful that your team is growing. I'm grateful that it's occurring in other agencies, but all of it requires on your participation, continually pushing the boundaries and bringing your ideas about what a better and brighter future can be. When I was preparing for this conversation, I thought about my own personal experience. I grew up just blocks from here in Barnum, hit by a car when I was 7 years old. On my bicycle, a helmet saved my life. Transportation equity and multimodal access is something that we all deserve, to go home safe. It works in our economy. It's an important right in my mind that we do everything we can to design our infrastructure to protect people, especially those who have differing needs. That's the most important thing. Because you think that accessibility isn't a thing that's going to impact you. I think it's only a matter of time. I took care of my grandma. She ultimately ended up in a wheelchair. I myself have been diagnosed with an eye disease. My vision is going away. These are things that we need to think about, that it is a continuum in your lifetime around access and ability. Also in my life, I faced displacement and eminent domain in my community. Many people might know the fervor that I fought with for the creation of this office was driven through the I-70 expansion, which brought more pollution and harm, took homes, spent resources from across the state into my community. And in COVID, we saw the connection between public health and air quality and what roads can do positively and negatively. How we spend our money equitably across the state is important. Road safety is important. Civil rights and contractors and small businesses built by and for and with our communities is truly what Build Back Better and environmental justice is about. SB 260 did a lot to also change our thoughts about climate and making sure that the plans that we're investing in lead us to a better future, not one that's more in chaos. And so today, I look at this as the opening of a new chapter of opportunity. to link transportation and housing, to create climate-friendly opportunities, to think about transportation projects and redesigns as a way to improve public health, both for air quality and the ability for people to get out of their cars, to think about electrification and regional front range rail, bus staying, and buses that connect communities who, due to systemic issues, are relegated to living down valley from communities and commuting hours a day, uncompensated. I hope that you will enjoy this conversation because it's only the first. And I hope that you will learn today and continue to come to CDOT Commission hearings, because I have been in this room when there are 3 people in this room. When $1 billion are on the line is when we need to have the seats full. So please join Green Latinos and our partners in making sure that participation is the new future for CDOT. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Now I'd like to introduce our director, executive director here at the Colorado Department of Transportation, Director Shoshana Liu.
Great. Thanks, Marsha, and thanks, Ian, for those wonderful remarks. I agree with so much of what you said. One thing I would quibble with is only that it's the first conversation, because something that I see that's really remarkable being here today is that there's new friends, but also old friends who have been here back and time again, helping this conversation evolve, tremendously, year after year, and thinking back to how much change there's been in certainly the 5.5, almost 6 years I've been here, due to the kind of constant dialogue that has been so sort of deliberate and mindful in helping us pursue change. I think about when I got here, 5.5 years ago, and I think the first conversation I had with the governor was him asking me if that Central 70 project was really past the point of no return. The answer, as you all know better than I do, was yes. But it got me into the space of digging into what had happened and sort of what had transpired between the communities and CDOT during that very complicated period of time, which I think a lot of good came out of it, but it also created a lot of things that needed to be healed in the years that followed. There were lots of stories about the times that people have been turned away with their opinions. Stories that very senior leadership had told communities, so sue me if you don't like what we're doing. Kinds of things that shouldn't be the way that, we as public stewards, deal with the communities who we serve. And, something that I think every one of us in this room, and in large part the CDOT staff have tried to take forward from that experience was what we did learn about how to interact more productively, with communities like yourselves and like so many folks here. And, I think the fact that we are able to engage in a very different way and have people who are experts, I see lots of them around the room today, who can lead a bilingual meeting, right? Who can lead an accessible meeting. Our whole communications division knows how to do that now. And that's just not something that was the case before. And, I think it speaks to a very different CDOT than existed, before you all got involved in a conversation that needed more involvement. To reflect on a personal experience before I got here, I worked for Anthony Fox at the Secretary of Transportation at the time in DC. And when I worked for him at the end of the Obama administration, he was sort of pushing people to talk more seriously about how highways had sometimes divided communities in the country, about the things that had happened historically. And it was like on the very fringe of the conversation. I mean, I remember him trying to bring this to the forefront and it being treated as sort of a second-tier initiative that couldn't get people involved. You look now and see how kind of normal it's become for us all to be having those conversations and to, have to kind of account for the good, the bad, and the ugly of what transportation has meant and needs to mean in the communities where we all live, work, interact with one another, and sort of what it means for everything from equal access to, having options that help us combat the existential threat of climate change, to being able to, break down barriers that, get in the way of education and jobs and otherwise. And that doesn't just happen. It happens because, there's lots of people around the country pushing the dialogue forward one step at a time. So, what I see here today, is the first, we always good to start a new chapter, but it's also, the kind of, culmination of another chapter that has been very, I think, healthy for this organization and, has led to a lot more opportunities for us all to work together on, projects that I think we can interact on a different way than used to be the case. And, I see the debate that happened around 260 and the collaboration that happened this past legislative session as in many ways just showing, how productively that has evolved over the last few years. It's so helpful to us, the number of people who show up at commission meetings now. Ian mentioned like we shouldn't be making billion-dollar decisions with 3 people in a room. Couldn't agree more. And if you look at the commission meetings that have happened over the last few years, there's just a chorus of voices that come give public comment every month. And it's changed things. I mean, you see, I watch the interaction in the room between the commissioners and the folks who are commenting, and it really does make a difference to come to those kinds of interactions, to comment on our 10-year plan, right? To use every venue for dialogue to make your opinion known. That's how government should work. And I think it's just really important to take the time to learn where those opportunities are, for us to take the time to make them easier to access, and for those to be places where there's a back and forth that's real. So thank you to everyone who's here today to engage in the process today, but also, I think, we just reinforce that these opportunities, Colorado has a lot of transparency laws. That means, our decisions get made in broad daylight and everybody's voice can be heard. So I'm going to talk for a few minutes about some of the nuts and bolts of, what is CDOT? What do we do? And we'll just walk through some of the kind of logistical things about our organization, just in the interest of helping to educate a little bit about how to interact with us and how to get involved. So next slide, please. Oh, am I doing it? Look at that. Okay. What is CDOT and what do we do? Just a little bit about the organization. Our budget is roughly $2 billion a year. That number changes a little bit year to year and gets more complicated as we have more innovative enterprises working alongside us, thanks to the hard work over the last few legislative sessions. So this does not show, the new transit dollars, for example, from last session, because those are not going through CDOT, they're through separate enterprises, but that's kind of our core budget. You see the vehicle miles traveled, but I'd like to quickly complement that with the Mustang passengers making trips and how excited we are to see that, both of those 2 things working together more. We support some of the smaller airports in the state, maintain bridges, plowing snow is something I can't reinforce enough as a kind of thing that everybody needs that sometimes gets taken for granted that we do. More than half of our staff are the men and women who operate our maintenance division and do kind of the day-to-day of snow and ice removal and so much critical safety work. So lots of day-to-day in the kind of operational world that sometimes takes a less public profile than our projects. Our org chart. If you can see this, your vision is better than mine. Because this is a bit of an eye chart, but it is on our website, and we will make these slides available so that you can peruse them a bit. But just to talk a little bit about what our organization looks like, we have our headquarters building is the where you are right now, and that's the kind of central functions work out of CDOT headquarters. So you have our finance division, the budget, run by Jeff Sudemeyer, that sits within headquarters. The engineering division, run by Keith Stefanik, who's here, runs out of headquarters. The leadership of the maintenance and operations division sits in headquarters, but in all of these functions, a lot of the folks who do the day-to-day functions sit in our regions. And then kind of our oversight functions like human resources, the audit office, the executive team, communications all sit in our headquarters division here. So if you hear headquarters, we're talking about those cross-cutting functions that work out of Denver and have their kind of home base here or in one of our other Denver buildings. And then we have our regional staff, and most of the people who work at CDOT are actually out in the field. And again, more than half of the organization works in the maintenance and operations division. So those are the folks in the big orange trucks you see when there's a Colorado winter evening. But also many of the engineers on our team work in the regional offices, so that projects like the project staff for, Glenwood Canyon is has their headquarters in Glenwood Springs. So, the folks who do the project specific work tend to live and work close to where those projects are, in the same vein as the folks in the maintenance and operations division. So that's, that's kind of how it's broken down. And again, most of the people work in the regions, and that's, we have a footprint across the state, which is great for making sure that the people who are doing the work on the ground have to live with it, right? The best way to understand how to fix a traffic jam is to sit in it yourself. And, for the folks who do snow and ice operations, they actually are required to live within a certain radius of where they have to work, because otherwise you can't get there in a storm. And, something I would just add peripherally to that is that, we have a deep familiarity with the challenges that come from the cost of housing in so many of these places. And we're actually working to build workforce housing because we struggle so deeply with finding folks who can live in the places where we need them to work. Like, we can't ask somebody to, work out of Vail if they can't live in Vail. And, everyone who takes their vacation in Vail needs us to have folks to plow the snow in the winter. So, I think a lot of the challenges that Ian was talking about with, access, really resonate when thinking about our own workforce and just how hard it is to get people to be able to live in the places where they can do the job of our organization. Talked a little bit about our regions, but just so you have names to faces, and all of our regional administrators are awesome and have really built up the kind of access functions within their organizations too. Jessica Mickelbust runs CDOT Region 1, that's the Denver region. Shane Ferguson runs Region 2, which is like Pueblo, Colorado Springs, or south. Jason Smith runs our Region 3, which, as you can see, is an awful lot of the mountains. So, the mountain crises that happen far and again, he's the lucky winner. Heather Paddock, our Region 4 director, oversees the northern area. So, Larimer, Weld, Boulder, and many of the areas north of Denver. And Julie Constant, CDOT Region 5, which is the Four Corners in the Southwest. And also, I would, since we talked about it a bit earlier, a lot of our work doing government to government relations with tribal nations happens in Region 5 because of where it is, and their team does a lot of the leadership functions in that space too. Transportation Commission, they are the statutory governing body appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate, who have a tremendous over policy and budget for the department. And as Ian and I have both mentioned, they meet once a month. It is really important to pay attention to those meetings in order to engage, because every time we spend a dime, it goes to the commission, essentially. I mean, the budget decisions that we make about our projects, none of that happens without a public dialogue in the context of that commission. And, a lot of information gets prepared in advance of those meetings. So, I would say that, when I need to answer a question about what happened with our work 5 years ago, Herman and I go digging in the commission records, because that's where so much of it is recorded. So, I would say that the single most effective way to make your voice heard regularly with CDOT processes is to, tune into those commission meetings and sign up for public comment and, speak about your opinion about the issues that they're considering, because so many big decisions come before that body. There are also a number of other sort of smaller enterprise boards that have transportation related functions, including several created by Senate Bill 260 with more of a climate and transit focus. And the transit bills that passed the legislature and were signed by the governor this year increased the stature of those. So, there will be increasingly more public meetings to tune into with some of these other boards, like the Clean Transit Enterprise, the High Performance Transportation Enterprise, which does business under the Colorado Transportation Investment Office. There's several others, and each with their own acronym, but they all sort of oversee a portion of the transportation functions at this point. In terms of knowing who your commissioner is, you can see these districts and it's broken out by area. So if you want to make contact with the individual who represents the area where you live, here's a map that just kind of gives you that sense. But, I would say for efficiency, if you're looking to give kind of a sense of your view to the commission, sign up for those public comments. You can do it virtually, you can do it in person. And, you get about 3 minutes, and it's, they really do pay attention, and they read letters too. This is just a list of who the current commissioners are. And, these folks turn over periodically too. So I would also say, think about who would be good folks to get considered for this board in the future. If you're interested in being considered for, any of these boards and commissions, contact the governor's boards and commissions office and throw your name in the hat. There's a lot of these boards, and they turn over. So, citizens like yourselves really do make up these incredibly important groups. A little bit about CDOT funds and where they come from. Am I doing this, or are we turning this over? I can just keep talking. So that's kind of a bit about our governance structure and, how to get involved. Just a little bit on CDOT dollars and where they're coming from. And, again, this ratio is changing as the laws increase some of the less traditional sources, which is a great thing because it means we're investing more in things like transit. Federal programs comprise still the largest single contributor to our programs. That comes in a bunch of different varieties. So most of the funds that come to us from the federal government come through what's called the formula. And basically there's like a allocation approach that the federal government takes where they pass about, a certain number of dollars to each state. We have no say in how much it is. In fact, Colorado gets a lot less per capita than other states, which is a story for another day. But that money comes to us, with some restrictions on how it's used. And increasingly there's a few different programs, some with like more of a climate focus, but essentially these are pass-through dollars from the federal government. There are also increasingly competitive grant programs. So like when we pick a project, say we wanted to all, hypothetically, get bus rapid transit on Federal Boulevard, right? Something that's near and dear to my heart is a project that we're really trying to take to the next level. We could apply for grants for it competitively, and we plan to. So, a high priority project tends to compete really well. So if you have ideas about those kinds of projects, that's a space where there's a lot of partnership between the state and local governments happening too. And I think we're trying to be really creative about how we apply for programs. I'll note that there is a new fund through the stimulus bill that passed a few years ago that establishes a program to help reconnect communities that were divided by highways. I mentioned how this was sort of off on the side in the years ago, and like now there's a federal program to help reconnect communities that people like all of ourselves could apply for, and we've won some grants, and we're going to keep applying for more. So that's sort of the federal side. Then on the state side, there's a few different sources that do different things. There's the Highway Users Tax Fund, or the HUTF, which is kind of the most traditional source of state dollars and the most flexible. In practicality, what that does at this point, and this is where gas tax money goes, and the gas fee that was established as part of Senate Bill 260 goes there too, with with some of the other smaller fees. This is mostly used by both the state and local partners for basic maintenance because you can't use federal dollars for things like plowing snow, which we can have our opinions on this, but it's not allowed. So these state dollars, are the main source that we have to do the kind of bread and butter of our organization, and the locals use it in similar ways. So, that pays for snow and ice operations, salaries and expenses, including for people who can't build a projects, and that ends up doing that for the local recipients too. And a portion of the HUTF goes to the state, which you see here, and then there are also portions that go to counties and cities across Colorado. We have a relatively small aeronautics program that mostly supports the smaller sort of non-DIA airports across the state and helps them compete for grants. So that's a function that we have as well. There's the Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise, which was significantly expanded as part of Senate Bill 260. It existed before that, but got a lot bigger. And this is primarily to avoid bridges falling into disrepair, and was expanded essentially to be able to fix the Eisenhower Tunnel. So these dollars are somewhat restrictive and are largely being used to keep Colorado's bridges from falling onto the bad bridge list that the federal government runs, where if you go too far onto the bad bridge list, you end up with closed bridges, something we've experienced in the last few months in Gunnison County, which is great, a really problematic situation you don't want to be in. Other state funds, are kind of an increasing pot of dollars, where we're starting to see more and more go towards transit and multimodal. And, I think you've seen the priority in the legislature turn towards, more transit and multimodal in the last few years. Again, in no small part because there's been such a vocal outcry about how important it is. And you see this share of the pie expanding. And with that, I will talk a little bit about the other CDOT enterprises, which, that's a pretty big sliver of the pie at this point. And I mentioned that some of the new dollars are going into these other enterprises. And the reason we have these enterprises is because, under Tabor, there are a lot of technicalities about how a user fee can or cannot be used. And long story short is typically if something is charged as a user fee rather than a tax, it goes into a independent enterprise with independent oversight in order to comply with Tabor. So the transit dollars that passed through the legislature last year are all going to be routed through these entities that have separate boards and are separate from CDOT, but support core transit operations. So that's sort of what you're seeing there. The toll program also is run through an enterprise through the CTIO, which I mentioned. The non-attainment air pollution mitigation enterprise, I should mention because it was a real innovation of Senate Bill 260. It's a smaller one, but I think we were one of the first in the country who set up something like this, and we saw a lot more of it when the feds passed their bill. So that gives you, a sense of how our budget breaks down. Again, these amounts change a little bit year to year because so much of it is based on fees and taxes that change a little bit year to year. But that gives you a sense if we start using acronyms. Here's a cheat sheet to go back and find what they mean and call us out on it because we should speak in full sentences, not acronyms. Faster. Oh, you just got me with one from before my time. 10 points. Does anyone know what FASTER actually stands for? We should have a prize. I can tell you what it was. It was a transportation bill a few years prior to anyone in this room's tenure, I think, that set up a safety program and had a small amount for transit. And you got me. I could not tell you what the acronym is. So that's everything you need to know about government acronyms. All right, next slide. What? Oh, I'm sorry. How are funds allocated? Okay. Funding advancement for surface transportation and economic recovery of 2009. That just rolls off the tongue. Can anyone repeat what we just said? I cannot. Too late in the evening. So just a little bit about how funds are allocated. There's the capital construction and maintenance and operations are sort of the largest items in the budget, as you would expect. Capital construction is projects, right? So, be it a big project like, I-25 or, Federal Boulevard or, a small one like a surface treatment in, Pagosa Springs, right? All of that would be under the capital construction program. And this is where all the 10-year plan primarily lives and is kind of the biggest chunk of the budget. Maintenance and operations is snowplows. It's, real-time traffic operations. You may not know that there's like a mega computer behind each tunnel that we have, but there's a lot of kind of back-end technology that goes into running the roads, and that is all in this structure. And a lot of the kind of basic safety things that you don't think about are kind of in this portfolio. Multimodal services, so busing, rail projects, the electric vehicle charging, the kind of clean transportation world. Debt service, when we take out loans, financing is not funding, and we have to pay back the debt over time. We joke about them like large mortgages on your house. Agency and operations, someone's got to pay for the people. So sort of, you could call it overhead, though I think that's kind of a negative word, but the kind of running of the department. And sub-allocated programs are really important piece of the puzzle where, where we work in partnership with local entities who receive CDOT funds. So, think revitalizing Main Street or local pass-throughs, all of that goes into the sub-allocations. All right. Partnerships. And so someone cut me off when I get to the part of the slides. Is this my last one? Okay. Just a little bit about sort of who we kind of work with in the constellation of players. The federal government, we work primarily with the U.S. Department of Transportation, and all of them, the sort of sub-agencies under it that do things like highways, transit, rail, traffic safety. I would note that there's other agencies we deal with too, like the EPA. And the more that we delve into the environmental and clean transportation space, the more sort of collaborative that becomes. But there's a lot of requirements with any project that are actually under the oversight of EPA. So that's one that I would mention too. When we deal with public lands, the Interior Department or the Department of Agriculture tend to run those. So if we if we do a partnership with the Forest Service, we're working with the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture. If we're working in a national park, that's the Department of the Interior. State, this is just a small subset of the many state agencies we work with. And I think something that has been really positive in the last few years that the Polis administration has really focused on there being initiatives that cut across agencies in a lot more seamless of a way than before. So, you'll see us doing a project with like Will Torr's office. Those agencies didn't work as much together, as much in previous years. And I think that there's really been like a very healthy focus on interagency coordination that is part of a generally collaborative approach. And then local governments, city and county governments are often direct recipients from CDOT. So are metropolitan planning organizations. So DRCOG, for those of you who live in, there's another acronym, it's a mouthful, the Denver Regional Council of Governments. Don't ask me to name out all the other ones in this country. But like what an MPO is a regional body that's established by statute from the feds. So it's actually the feds who set up what these regions are, and then kind of give them a role in helping to make sure that we're thinking beyond city limits. So, it's really helpful if you have, an area like Denver where we have, Denver proper, but we also have so many suburbs that need to be accessible from Denver. DRCOG, plays an important role in making sure that there's a regional conversation and that we're thinking about people needing to get across the whole region and not just each municipality in isolation. For rural areas, we have what's called transportation planning regions that play sort of a similar role for rural areas, but they have less force of federal authority behind them. So they don't pass through dollars. Like a lot of our formula allocation each year, we actually pass through to DRCOG, who passes it through to local partners. And that's sort of unique to an MPO. They also have public meetings, and the regional plan of projects goes through DRCOG, not CDOT. So, when you're thinking about what mix of projects you want to see prioritized in the region, their master list is incredibly important for what goes in as a priority. And, I think I will point to, DRCOG is really a national champion in taking a different approach in advancing greenhouse gas priorities. Like when we worked together to establish the first in the country greenhouse gas pollution reduction planning standards for transportation regions, DRCOG immediately revised their whole transportation plan and made buses a higher priority. I think it's an example of how powerful they can be in lifting up, some of the vision that on things like transit and access and all of those things. And they're incredibly important partners. So, in addition to coming to our meetings when we talk about interesting things, theirs are extremely important and are also publicly noticed in a similar manner. And I think now I'm done talking. So are we doing questions or? Okay, passing off to Marcia.
Thank you very much, Director Liu. So before I begin, I guess it should be said that if anyone needs a bio break, restrooms are right outside this door, immediately to your left. If you need to take a quick break, please make sure you get some of our snacks and beverages while you're here. So get up and, move around. You don't have to sit up in your seats and things like that. Okay, I will go ahead and begin. Again, my name is Marcia Nelson, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about our Office of Environmental Justice and Equity. So it did pass, I think Ian mentioned it, through Senate Bill 21260, and I will go ahead and just read this. In Senate Bill 260, it established the creation of the Environmental Justice and Equity Branch within CDOT's Engineering, Design, and Construction Division, and requires the branch to identify and address technological, language, and information barriers that may prevent disproportionately impacted communities from participating fully in transportation decisions that affect health, quality of life, and access for disadvantaged and minority businesses and project delivery. And that's how I came to be, as well as the office itself. So I definitely appreciate many of the community advocates and, of course, Director Liu and the agency, because they were the ones who planted the seed, right, for this office and this mission to happen. So when I started back in December of 21, I was kind of like, oh, wow, what do I do now? How do you create an office essentially from the ground up? And so it was really important to create the mission, but making sure it's in alignment as you saw all of the partners that we have, federal, state, and local. Those are many different requirements that we must go by and adhere to. So the EJE mission is to facilitate social and economic opportunities by providing equitable levels of access to affordable and reliable mobility options, which is accomplished through something we call Equity 360. And this is our overarching vision to go beyond compliance and encourages a holistic approach. So coming in, there were so many things to tackle when we think about environmental justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. So it was really important to start at the core. And the core was for everyone to understand, what does it mean when we talk about equity? What does transportation equity actually mean? Well, for us, it means looking at the transportation services that we provide and ensuring that it is accessible to all people. Recognizing that there are some communities that have received more burden than benefits. So you have to look at the balance between benefits and burden. And when we talk about equity, I really stress the fact within CDOT is that equity really is the responsibility of all of us. It is not one person, it is not one office. I am not an engineer. Selena is not a planner. But we do our best to partner with the different offices, branches, divisions, and regions across CDOT to help educate what does it mean about equity, diversity, inclusion, accessibility. Understanding those core items helps lead us to environmental justice. So when we think about Equity 360, there are 4 guiding principles. Proactive compliance. As you saw, we receive a lot of money from our federal government. We must ensure those rules and regs, we are compliant with them, even at a state level. Is that something we can slack on? No. We want to achieve 100% compliance. Equity 360 says, you know what? We're going to hit compliance, but we're going to go beyond it. We're going to be creative and innovative. right? We're going to leverage the knowledge that each individual internally to our agency and external, that is all of you, our community, right? And humility and respect, recognizing the fact that every one of us has a different life experience. And those different life experiences create a livable community. We have to understand people's different life experience and be humble and respectful of all of those to ensure the services we provide as an agency truly makes it accessible for every person. So our branch, I call it an office, comprises of 4 pillars. Number 1, I will talk about contract compliance. For those of you who may have worked with CDOT before, you may have heard about the Civil Rights Business Resource Center. So they are the office or the pillar that looks at contract compliance and civil rights. Who here is familiar with titles, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VI? I know many of you are. Oh, you filed a complaint? Was it what? I'm not gonna get into that. On I-70, okay. Well, everyone has the opportunity to do that. It is a public thing. So our office does handle those Title VI complaints, but it is to ensure that individuals, there is no discrimination in the services that we provide. So we always kind of call that the external services, right? It also consists of the work that we do around what we call disadvantaged business enterprise. You can call them small businesses as well, but the federal government calls them disadvantaged business enterprise. As a disadvantaged business, you are basically a 51% owner that is either woman or minority, African American, Asian, Hispanic, Latino, Native American, and I know I'm missing, but I'm a minority, disadvantaged. And so there are what we call DBE, disadvantaged business enterprise goals that we have as an agency, small business goals. When you think of small business, I think the numbers may have changed a bit, but statewide, the federal government identifies approximately 90% of the businesses in our state are considered a small business. Now, what considers you a small business is a variety of things. It is your annual revenue, your 3-year combined annual revenue, as well as the type of work that you do and the number of employees in your company. So that will vary from different scope of work or the type of work that you do. Some of the things that we do there and we look to advocate for any of you who may be a small business owner, you probably understand that access to capital is very difficult for small businesses. And so when you look at the federal equity plan, one of their pillars is wealth creation. For many communities, small businesses is the foundation of success for that community, but also for those families. So when we think of small business in our agency, how can we increase opportunity, maximize opportunity for small businesses, smaller contractors on our projects? But it's 2-part. It means that our contracting businesses and consulting businesses really need to understand the type of work that we do as an agency. So my goal in the contract compliance and civil rights to small business specifically is really to help educate all of the businesses across our state so they understand the type of work that we do as an agency, understanding the larger businesses as well that do the business that we do, looking at unique partnerships. I cannot force a large and a small business to partner together, but we do ask them to partner on various projects, right? Those are those DB goals, how those come into play. Affirmative action and equal employment opportunity, also called AAEEO. I'm sure y'all have heard that. That does fall under our office. So that's Title VII. Is that a typo? Nope, Title VII. So it's looking at our internal staff and ensuring no discrimination against race, sex, gender, et cetera, within CDOT staff. And so that is So contract compliance, that was Greg Deal and Monica Villalpando, who do that work for us in our office. Mei Zong is our AAEEO officer, and she does partner with our HR department and teams with many of them to help with our internal cases or questions that may happen and arise in our staff. Workforce development. What we do there is developing of a cradle to career program. So how can we, as an agency, help develop the next generation of transportation leaders? Right now, if you're in this industry, you will recognize that the trades is lacking in workforce. So how can we help build that workforce so that our agency, locally, statewide, federal, all of these various projects that need to happen, have a workforce to help with that? I believe that ties directly to wealth creation as well, another USDOT initiative, right? As someone who started in the construction industry, although vertical, I started off in the field literally as an intern, worked my way up to become a field engineer, wearing a harness, pouring concrete, worked a lot with our craft in the field. I probably couldn't pour concrete now, but I did many years ago. I can put up drywall. I just replaced a toilet in my bathroom. Yay. But those things and really working in the field, it gave me, it gives a lot of respect for our craft in the field. And for CDOT, I would call that our maintenance, those who are maintaining our roads day to day. That is very hard work. It's backbreaking work. They are the ones who allow us to get to our schools, to our jobs, to the hospitals if we need healthcare needs. So it's very important, and you can be very successful in the trades. And so in the workforce development, we are actually just hired a new person who's going to be our program manager in that area. We're looking at ways starting from kindergarten through 12 to help build the pool so that our HR team can go out and start hiring for our projects. But what that also helps is the industry across the state. It helps the workforce from the private perspective as well as the public perspective. And then environmental justice. That is Selena over here. Her and I work hand in hand. I'll say she actually does most of the work. I put a lot of stuff on her. Really engagement. And so how we provide fair, equitable, inclusive, and accessible public participation opportunities for all people across Colorado. And so in the environmental justice space, some of the things that we've done that we're very excited and proud about is first, of course, kicking off participation on the EJ Environmental Justice Action Task Force, that little committee that I told you Ian and I became friends on. And there were many recommendations that came out of that task force that have been passed by legislation. I will say and put on record that we are the first agency to really begin implementing many of those recommendations. We're not done, we're still working, but we were definitely one of the first to do that, along with our partner CDPHE, who's really running and overseeing much of the EJ work that's happening across our state. So for example, one of the things that we've done around EJ is we have actually married Title VI and Equity 360 together. So if you remember, Title VI are rules and regs we must comply from a federal perspective. Equity 360 says, abide by the rules, but let's go beyond. Let's see what we can do. And so for Title VI, we've created a 5-year plan. We are now in year 2, going into year 3. I am having to, y'all hear it first, I need to expand year 2, because in year 2, we are now working with the Division of Planning. So how do we ensure we're including environmental justice in an EJ lens and an equity lens as we work and build our next 10-year plan, as we work with our planners and our engineers around what does transportation look like for the future? In the first year, we worked with the comms or communications team, and we built an equity toolkit around public involvement. And what's very exciting about that is we are looking to expand that toolkit as we are now working in the year 2, of course, with our planners and engineers. There's more that we can tighten up there. But really, we really kicked off a lot of things with our environmental team. And you'll hear a little bit more about that work. They do a lot of, that was my cue to move on. Okay. They do a lot of work around EJ and public involvement, and we're very excited about that work. And we've made very good headway. One of the things that we've also done around EJ and equity, we created an internal equity ambassador program. And so right now, when you think of EJ and equity, that is Selena and myself. But think of the size of CDOT. Think of the regions that we have. We have 3,000 plus employees in our agency. And so what we've done is we've created a volunteer ambassador program where the two of us, really mostly a two, where is she? Oh, she's in the children's room. Okay, well, it's actually the three of us. There's a two and Selena and myself, and we've created an equity ambassador program where we are providing the tools around educating EDIA, equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. And they will be getting a certificate from us, right? Because we all like credentials. We all like badges we can put on LinkedIn, right? So we are doing that for our ambassadors. But in doing that program for the past year, what has come of that and what is growing is many of the ambassadors, and they come from different offices across the agency. I've got planners, environmental specialists, I've got engineers, I think I have someone in maintenance, right? And so they have become an extended voice of our office. And what that has done is allowed us to engage with more projects across the state. Some projects we've been working on are 270. I see the 270 team here. Another project is the 23rd and Spear project we've partnered with, helping them around their public involvement, language access and translation services. I believe another is the Colorado BRT, federal BRT, and many more, but I don't want to take up everybody's time. I do want to show you all this. This is the navigation that our office has to do. It looks simple, right? There's a lot of federal executive orders, like the Environmental Justice Executive Order 12898, which actually also created 14096, which is revitalizing our nation's commitment to environmental justice for all. It also creates Executive Order 14091, which further advances racial equity and support for underserved communities. Then I've got to look at the state, Senate Bill 260, which we must abide by. Then go back to the federal, Title VI, Title II, and Title VII, right? That's a lot of stuff. Makes you a little bit dizzy. But looking at all of that, we're excited, we're doing the work. And what that has created is I spent a lot of time studying many of these federal state orders. What we've done is we built our work around what we call a frame or a framework. And I call it the 3 Ps. There's 4, but I'm going to say 3. We focus on people, places, programs, and projects. And by focusing on those 3, it creates livability. Livability for all of you, for all of us. The drivers that we look at to focus on people, places, programs, and projects, we focus on compliance, accessibility, economic development, workforce development, public engagement and involvement, health and environment, planning, transportation safety, quantitative and qualitative data, and clean transportation. This is my favorite quote. So those of you who have seen me talk, you've seen this. You're going to see it again. The reason why we're here today, transportation is the common denominator that builds communities. I would love to take credit for this, but it's not my quote. This is my friend, Keith Benjamin at FHWA. I met him many years ago before I came to CDOT, as I was learning transportation myself. And when I think about this as someone who also is still learning this industry, if you think about it, I believe this is true. How many of us use some form of transportation to get here? What did we do? Who drove a car? Who rode a bike? Who walked? Somebody took a light rail. There you go, right? It connects us to everything in our life. And what I notice is a lot of people don't really think about transportation until it affects something in our life. But it also does a lot of great in our life as well. And so, why we are here today is we want to make sure that we are listening to all levels of voices. And so, this is a great opportunity. I think it was mentioned here. This is not the first, or I'm sorry, it is the first. This is not the last time that we want to reach out to our communities and hear your voices, right? You are the ones that are impacted by these roads, the access to these roads, or the inaccess to these roads that we have, or even bridges. And so we ask you to take the time to share your ideas and your thoughts. I believe we posted 5 different focus areas for you. You may not remember, but we'll post them. I'm going to ask our table monitors to come up. Come up. Start making your way up. And they're going to give you a little spill about the 5 tables. For those of you who are online, you will be through magic. I'm not sure how, but through magic, you will be moved to a Zoom room with the same, how should I say, the same topic, if you will, right? Now, you don't have to stay in the same room or table the entire time. You can float to different tables if you wish. I will let all of you pick what corner of the room you want to be in, but take the time to understand a little bit about some of our strategic focus areas. And we look forward to hearing from all of you. And our commitment, how did I miss this? Our equity statement. We will send a copy to all of you for this. We will also have a Spanish translation for you. So I think we have all of your contact informations. If not, feel free to leave a business card or your name with one of us. Someone with an orange name tag can take that. And I'm going to hand this off to Selena to help manage our breakout session, please. And she'll bring up you guys.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the Community Partnership Program of our program tonight. We're super excited. This is where we get to come into true partnership with all of you and make sure that your voice is heard. So you're going to hear from all of these amazing individuals that we've had the opportunity to work with on some of the, honestly, the tip of the iceberg of the work that's going on here at CDOT. We're going to send it over to Manjari first, and then I'll see who's next. I have a feeling it might be, okay, Manjari. Please give her a round of applause.
Thank you, Selena. My name is Manjari Bhatt, and I oversee our transportation safety and performances unit under our traffic engineering and safety services branch here in headquarters. One of the things that we are really taking a look at is advancing our transportation safety. So, and anytime we use our transportation system, we want to make sure that everybody arrives to their destination safely. So one of the things that we are taking a look at that we've established is the safe systems approach. And the safe systems approach is really taking a look at our transportation system in pieces and allowing for redundancy so that our safety is increased whenever we have a crash or a situation, and we're taking a look at making our roadways safer. So the areas where we really want to, we've focused on is safe people, which really takes a look at the people using our transportation system. That would be your bike, ped, your younger driver, older drivers, and then safe driving, making sure that there are resources provided to folks to drive safe on our roadway, eliminating any kind of driving behaviors, risky driving behaviors. That would be impaired driving or risky driving, speeding, and then safe roads, building a really safe infrastructure or maintaining the infrastructure that we have to make sure that if an incident were to occur, then the impact would be reduced and it would not be as serious or fatal, but a crash that is not a high injury. And then our last is a post-crash care, and really taking a look at if a crash does occur, how do we get the proper response? How do we clean that incident off our roadway? And if there is a crash victim, how does that person get transported using our EMS service to the hospital and being provided the right type of life-saving, any type of life-saving techniques or anything like that that's needed for that. So where equity comes into all of this is really the safety culture. What is our culture within our organization and as a state as a whole? Taking a look, it's exactly like Marcia said, that the transportation system is our common denominator for everyone within our communities. That's what connects people together. That's what brings everyone have their form of identity and connect everyone together. So with this, we really are taking a look at, and actually this was a conversation that Marcia and I were having, I believe yesterday or a few days ago, and Marcia brought up this topic of who is the most vulnerable person using our transportation system. And if you design or address for the most vulnerable person, you are going to automatically address everyone. And I thought about it, and I'm an engineer, and I thought about it, and I was like, you know, that's a really good point. I've never thought about it that way. So looking at it in this approach, taking a look within safe people and safe driving, post-crash care, safe roads, who is the most vulnerable using our transportation system, as well as which community is most impacted in that? Would it be our rural or urban or rural communities not having easy access to transit, our bike peds, making sure that they have a safe facility where they feel safe using. And so taking a look at that and bringing together more than 80 stakeholders and identifying all of these action strategies that we can come together as a community and take a look and work on and implement to provide a safer transportation system and reduce our fatals and serious injuries on our roadway. With that, we are in the process of creating our strategic highway safety plan. This plan is extremely important, and we want to use the concepts that we have identified in ATS and really weave equity into everything that we do in safety. So this plan is, we are going to be going around the state to be talking and getting everybody's feedback on areas where we could see improvements in our transportation safety, and building a comprehensive plan to reduce fatals and serious injuries on our roadway. This is not a CDOT issue. This is a statewide issue. So we want to have the right people on the table. So that's where we have all of our different lead agencies, and we're coming together and bringing this plan together. So with that.
Hey, sure. Thanks. Good evening, everybody. My name is Kyle Arnold, and I'm here representing the Electrification and Energy Department of within the Office of Innovative Mobility here at CDOT. I'm going to lead the clean transportation electric vehicles discussion this afternoon. Just a quick overview of what the OIM Electrification Department does. Basically, we spend a lot of that SB 260 enterprise money through those five focus areas on the right. We don't have to go through each one of them here, but looking forward to speak with everyone tonight. Thanks.
Okay, real quick, because I know we're interested in getting the discussion. Anybody here heard of Bustang before? Show of hands, maybe? Yeah, that's us in the Division of Transit and Rail. We operate Bustang. We are also working on planning for the implementation of passenger rail in 2 corridors, Front Range and Mountain Rail. And then we also distribute a lot of federal and state funding to transit agencies throughout the state. And so we'll be talking about that at our table. So hope to see you there.
I'm Troy Luska. I'm an environmental planner here at CDOT, and I'm the senior NEPA specialist at headquarters. NEPA stands for the National Environmental Policy Act, and we have to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act because of all that federal money that Director Liu talked about and how much we get. And it seeps into every project. So we comply with the National Environmental Policy Act, which we call an umbrella law because it covers all these other laws that we take a look at on every single one of our projects. And within that umbrella is environmental justice. And we really started taking environmental justice very seriously during the Clinton administration in 1994 when he signed that first Environmental Justice Act. That act has been, or that executive order has been updated. One of President Biden's first executive orders on the day he took office was an environmental justice executive order. So we have evolved from the days of 1970 when NEPA was first signed to where we are today. And we take a look at environmental justice now on every single one of our projects, from the smallest intersection project to our larger I-270 projects. And we are very involved with the equity branch and office with public involvement and community outreach. And we continually improve that outreach and the folks that have typically not had a voice that now do have a voice. With that, I'm going to introduce the Environmental Justice Program Manager.
Hi, yeah, I'm Shay Riley, Environmental Justice Specialist through NEPA here at CDOT. So overall, the Environmental Justice Group is working on developing a NEPA-specific environmental justice guide, which will include a section specifically on outreach to disadvantaged communities. We're also currently progressing a few other environmental justice in a few other ways. So this includes, we are working on developing an updated CDOT-wide language access plan. This is in the very early stages still, but really looking forward to how this could help shape public outreach on our projects. And then also creating an equity mapping and project screening tool for the planning group. And this will help to elevate the projects that create more benefits for EJ populations. We have also been coordinating with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, so CDPHE, on revisions to their EnviroScreen tool, which is used throughout project life cycles to identify communities with pre-existing environmental or community hardships. Another thing that we've been working on, I'm going to have Nissa go ahead and talk about a little bit.
Hi, I'm Nissa Beach, and I'm a resident engineer here at the CDOT Region 1 South program. So I've been working with Selena, and one of the things that we have noted here is the collaboration with project development and project delivery and pulling together an accessibility public advisory board. So I want to share a bit from my lens from project development and project delivery because I help do the engineering and the construction to make the projects happen. And I'm working on a mobility hub project, the Lone Tree Mobility Hub project, just south of I-25 in Lincoln. And there is a quote that I hold close to my heart from Maya Angelou, which is, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. And I feel that that kind of, for me, summarizes what we can do when we're looking at going above and beyond the standards of ADA requirements. And in order to do that, in order to know better and to do better, it takes having these conversations and it takes listening. And so for our Mobility Hub project, we've reached out to a disability advocacy group, the Atlantis community, and took that opportunity to listen. And so for these conversations we're having here today, I just want to share a bit about what we're incorporating into our project to hit home that the listening and these conversations matter. So on our project, from the feedback that we had gotten from the Atlantis community, we are upgrading our public information display boards to upgrade the systems to include speakers so that we can work to have audio capabilities of our schedules that are displayed at the stations. Also wayfinding signage with embossed lettering in Braille, landscaping that mindfully creates distinction of walkways. And we're also creating dog relief stations to accommodate people who are using service dogs on the bus transit systems. So this is just to highlight some of the ways that we are listening and incorporating feedback into our projects.
All right, good evening. My name is Darius Pakbaz. I am the Director of the Division of Transportation Development and houses our environmental programs, which you heard about, and our planning programs as well. And our breakout session is talking about transportation planning in general. We are in development of a process to develop our 2050 statewide plans, looking at the future of transportation in the state, and will lead to our 10-year plan. So, and that starts with talking with the communities, talking with our local partners in order to develop our needs, and looking forward to having that conversation tonight. Thank you.
Okay, I feel like everybody needs to stand up. We need to stand up just a little bit. We need to stretch, but hold your hand out and I want you to raise a finger between 1 and 5. So a quick 5, you're like, okay, everybody, that's your table then. That's your table captain. And so follow your table captains to your next tables because we're going to actually go into the breakout session. So choose a table in the room, captains. You want to pick your table. We have some empty ones up here. Maybe we can even utilize these because we seem to be a little settled in, so I think it's good. So table 1, advancing transportation safety, vulnerable road users. Online participants as well, you're also going to go into your breakout rooms, and there are actually moderators from CDOT in those rooms as well. Table 2, raise your hand, clean transportation, electric vehicle. Number 3, clean transportation transit. Paul right there, Kyle. We've got environmental justice, Troy, environmental justice and public involvement. Darius, right up front, transportation planning process. We're going to spend about, let's do about 20 minutes in these breakout rooms, kind of going over all of our topics. Thank you very much. Through that. Now's your chance. Now's your opportunity to give us your valuable feedback on how you would like things to look at CDOT. Okay, everyone, if you can kind of wrap up your breakout session, give you another 1 minute. Thank you so much. Thirty seconds. Let's wrap up our final conversation. Hey, everybody, we're going to wrap up right now. Thank you so much for your participation in tonight's Environmental Justice Town Hall. Wrap up the conversations. They're back. So we've got our online participants back. It looks like we had some phenomenal discussions and conversations going. I'm sure everybody got to share. We've recorded the information. We'll be sharing that with all of you later. We truly appreciate your time, your effort, your energy. Any questions and comments can be sent to Marsha. We've listed our email in the chat as well. We also have a general email box that's DOT for Department of Transportation _civil rights at state.co.us. On behalf of CDOT, the Office of Environmental Justice, and everybody today, we thank you. There were so many individuals that helped with this presentation. I'd love to give a special shout out to our interpreters that are here with us, our ASL interpreters, the Spanish interpreters that were online, facilities. Jose has helped us both set up the room and run the Zoom. Jennifer is behind the scenes. You can't quite see her. It truly takes a village, and we greatly appreciate you. Have a good evening and be safe.